Welcome to Better Than We Found It, the podcast for leaders driven to leave a positive mark through their leadership.
I hope that I will have created some ways in which the circumstances of your birth don't predict the opportunities you have in your life.
I'm Josh Huggins, your host and the founder of GS2 Partnership, a search firm committed to connecting visionaries dedicated to environmental and social betterment.
I have two young sons. I want to be able to tell them I did use the resources and expertise of the company to try to create more awareness about climate change.
In each episode, we delve into the minds of executive and future leaders. We discuss how sustainability guides responsible leadership, sparks change, and drives value.
The way of thinking I try and advocate is for us all to think about us having a collective problem to fix, which is climate, and that we need to rebuild our global economy.
We are GS2, and we are on a critical journey to connect to those who believe in leaving the world better than we found it.
Hello and welcome back to Better Than We Found It, the podcast where we interview purpose-driven leaders who are driving ambitious organisations for the future. On today's show, I'm delighted to be joined by James Stander. Now, James is the founder of Sustainable Advantage, an ESG and sustainability consultancy that work with over 700 clients, including 40 private equity firms across a range of different industry sectors. But James's background and story is certainly a non-traditional one. Starting out as a chartered accountant before moving into M&A at PwC, he went on to found a facilities management business, which went through huge amounts of growth. But a pivotal moment where he lost out on a tender to another large listed FM firm based upon a sustainability question led him to understand and realise that sustainability was no more a tick box exercise, but something which could drive value creation through organisations. And from there, he decided to move on from the business, set up Sustainable Advantage, and over the past 15 years has been growing that to nearly 100 consultants, both in the UK and in France, operating globally. And he's here today to tell his story. So if you're an ambitious leader of a consultancy that's looking to hear some war stories about the journey, then this one's for you. If you're interested in how you balance sustainable purpose with business and commercial acumen, then this one's for you. And if you're interested in just a general, very, very high-paced and energetic story of somebody's journey in life, then I'm sure you'll be interested in this. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So James, welcome to Better Than We Found It.
Thank you, Josh. Good to be here.
Great. Well, I've done a mini intro to you before the episode, but I'm sure I didn't do you any justice. So for the audience that perhaps don't know you and the business, would you mind just giving a quick overview of who you are and the business?
Yeah, sure, Josh. So Sustainable Advantage is an ESG/sustainability consultancy formed in 2010, so been around for 15 years now. We've got 90 consultants operating out of 4 offices in the UK and an office in Paris. We've got about 700 clients that we help globally on their ESG journeys.
Brilliant. Well, I'm interested to find out more and about that, but also, and I know in our pre-conversation we've had good chat about this, your prior background and what's led you to be leading Sustainable Advantage. So rewinding all the way back, I know you started your journey as a chartered accountant and into M&A, and of course now an entrepreneur within sustainability. But how does that journey of career as a high-level summary compare to perhaps your expectations when you were younger and what you thought your career might be?
Josh, you got to buckle up. This is going to be quite a ride, a roller coaster ride of all sorts of proportions. I think I've got to start right at the beginning, really, because a lot of I guess my challenges as a youngster shaped I guess where I am today. So by all accounts, I was a difficult child, difficult for my parents. There wasn't the ADHD labeling or definition that there is today, and you were just a naughty child, or as they described me, I had ants in my pants, and that was pretty much exactly what it was like. My earliest recollection is just not being able to sit still and not being able to sleep. So as a sort of 5, 6-year-old, I'd lie in bed wide awake at, I don't know, 10, 11 at night and not understand the sleep thing. Well, everyone else in the house is asleep, but I can't sleep. And I remember my mom telling me later on that she went to the doctor when I was 3 and said, look, are there sleeping tablets we can give a 3-year-old? The doctor looked at her like she was crazy, but I just didn't sleep and I couldn't sit still. Of course, now today, I know why that is, but it was a big problem. So quite debilitating really as a young child trying to go through school and trying to sit still at a desk and learn and read, and it was just very difficult. So teachers used to had me tested. They thought I was deaf because I didn't listen, and it was a problem. So I in the 3rd year of school, I was about 8 years old then. I was in the bottom class, and I was bottom of the bottom class, and they wanted to keep me back a year. And my parents said, look, it's not going to help. This is going to just destroy him. The whole year is going to go up. You're going to have to keep this guy behind. And he's got this challenge. What else can we do? So they started trying to do stuff after school where they was trying to do remedial stuff, and I had to work with shapes and to try and get my brain to focus. But what actually coincided then is we moved down from Johannesburg down to Natal by the coast. And it was just a totally different world. After we lived literally right on the beach, the school was on the beach, and mom would pick me up, surf with the car, and I spent all afternoon outside doing activities. And then what we figured out was that physical drain enabled me in the evenings to actually focus a bit more on schoolwork. So once we figured that out, literally every day after school, it was school sports, it was down at the beach, it was football in the evenings, and on weekends my dad was quite a good golfer, and we played golf. So that really helped. And from that year, I started in the bottom class, actually went to the top class the year after. So I jumped the middle class. So it was a massive change. And for me, of course, being the problem child and always being labeled as difficult, it was quite a change for me that I realized I could actually focus. It was still a challenge, but manageable.
Sure.
So that really helped. I started playing, as I said, a lot of golf with my dad. And that got me through high school. I wasn't a top student, but I was okay. Sleep was still a problem. So in the evenings, still couldn't really fall asleep. And so my whole high school career, I remember literally sleeping in front of the TV. So I had my mattress that I'd pull out from the bedroom, put in front of the TV, and I'd sort of watch TV to try and distract my mind to sleep. That was how bad it was. So probably, I don't know, would get to sleep maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the mornings most nights, but survived and got through finishing school. But I was now determined I was going to become a professional golfer. I loved playing golf because it was something you could do. You hit a shot, you'd walk, you'd hit a shot. So for 5-6 hours, you're always busy. So I really enjoyed it. But unfortunately, had a bit of not a wonky swing, but I didn't have the greatest of swings. I got down to scratch. I was a good golfer, but I was nowhere near good enough to become a professional. And so a year and a bit out of school, my mom said to me, "Look, you're gonna live in a caravan. If you think you're gonna become a professional golfer, this is not gonna work. You're gonna starve." And I had this entrepreneurial bug in me, and I had tried a couple of things when I was at school, and I convinced my dad to. He had a business of his own with another business partner. It wasn't going so great. There's a bit of a mismatch there on sort of ethics and stuff. So I said to my dad, "Hey, look, there's this opportunity to buy this. It was like a fish and chips takeaway, but it was high end. So they would sell calamari and prawns, and so it was like a KFC, but they sold seafood, but you could get some really nice, good stuff." And I convinced him to go into with me. It was the April. And so he sold his share in the business, remortgaged the house, and we went into business together.
How old are you at this point?
So I was now a year and a half out of school. So I was 19.
Okay.
So cut a long story short, we worked for 8 months, 7 days a week. We would wake up at 7 in the morning. We would drive and we'd leave the house at 8. We'd drive to get to the shop at 9, set the shop up, work all day, close the shop at 9, clean up until 10:30, drive home, get home 11:30, half an hour, literally a cup of coffee, and then fall asleep and do that same thing again. So in my life, I've never ever worked as hard as that. And it never made it. And it was difficult for me to experience it because I'd convinced my dad to do it. And cut a long story short, we lost everything. We lost all the savings, house, we lost everything. And it's probably the biggest scar I still carry to this day is that realization or that knowledge that I sort of had convinced my dad to go into this bit because I had this entrepreneurial streak and I wanted to do it. And in the December, I said to him, "Look, this is a problem." So in South Africa, our year runs from January, not from September in the UK. So that December, I had to make a call, or I had to wait another year. And I was now 2 years out of school. All my friends were in university going through, and I was 2 years out of school, with nothing to show for it. And so, sorry, I'm just cancel this call. So, I then, it was a big problem for me. And I said to them, look, I'm going to have to go to university. This is not going to make it. We're going to, we've run out of money already. This is not going to make it. What do I do? And so I had to actually leave them in that shop, and I had to then move down to Port Elizabeth, was where my gran was, and there was probably one of the cheapest universities in South Africa. So I had to go to the bank. Hey, look, I need to study. Can I borrow money to go and study? Stayed with my gran, and then my parents sold the company 2 months later, but the guy they sold it to within a month just defaulted and shut the place down, and that was it. They had nothing. So they then joined me about 4 months after that. So,
and what was your relationship? Sorry to interject, but what was your relationship like with your dad, and how did he handle that?
It was tough for him. I think being a male, stereotypical male, you've got this bravado, you try hard at you're the head of the family, but he never recovered from it. He never recovered financially, physically, emotionally, never recovered. So he was then 50, and when we moved down to Port Elizabeth, he never got a job again. It was just difficult to get work, and he never really recovered. And I had to sort of watch that from that time, knowing that was because of a decision that I had made. So then when I went to university, I was now, you can imagine, I'm wound up already. I'm now wired. I'm now got adding stress, adding anxiety, that you're so far behind. And I remember it was a Friday afternoon, and I would go to the lecturer and say, look, I didn't understand this point. She said to me, what are you doing? All your friends are out on the beach playing around. You're now at 4 o'clock in the afternoon asking me because you don't understand this one thing. And I was getting now 80s and 90s because I just literally, I was so scared really that I was going to end up on the street. I had nothing. So worked really, really hard, at university, purely out of fear, I went to go and study to become an accountant. I mean, I'm the furthest from an accountant you can get, but I just knew that gave me security. And so yes, I was. So we lived in a 1-bed flat. So I slept on a lounge floor for I think it's 2.5 years. So I used to work in the evenings. My dad would take the sofa cushions, put them on the lounge floor. He had those sheets with a little elastic on the side that you sort of wrap it around. And I'd get home at night, and that was my bed, and I slept. And I knew nothing else because I'd slept for my school time on the floor anyway. So it didn't make a difference to me. But I remember the one night I'd met this lady, and I just sort of, we went back to my house after we'd gone out there. Yeah, there was this mattress ready laid on the floor. And she said, I don't know what you're thinking, but take me home. And I said, no, it's not like that. It's not what I mean. And she's like, no, sorry. It's a step too far. So anyway, but we got on because we were in it together. My family, we lived in one house. We had to, my mom got a job as a secretary, and we lived on just together. And that we were always very close because of what we'd been through, and we were still together there. So it was a very, in a strange way, a happy time because we were together. But again, there was this feeling of what does the future hold? You got no income, you got no security, you got no house, you got no savings. That's stressful. And in South Africa, there's no safety net like the UK. There's people here that can look after you. South Africa, you haven't got money. You're in big trouble. So anyway, I qualified, did a Bachelor of Commerce, did an Honours in Commerce, and then I did my 3 years of articles with PwC. But they realized during that time that I was the furthest thing from an accountant as you can get, and they shipped me off to the M&A team in Johannesburg with I think it was about 6 months to go of my 3 years, and I absolutely loved that. But now I had another problem because my salary went from 5,000 Rand a month to 20,000 Rand a month, so from £200 a month to quadruple that, and so I didn't now need to work in the evenings. So now I would work during the day, do my gym, and I then get home at 8 o'clock at night, and it's like, well, what do I do now? This is a problem for me. I'm bored. So anyway, I enrolled, did 2 degrees. I did a degree in the morning and a degree in the evening, one on Saturday, one on Sunday. And again, with my ADHD to keep me busy, but also the fear of how do I achieve something, and I was trying to just learn as much as I could from any source I could. And then I got asked to join the team in London in December 2000. And again, that was great because I got over here and it was a new city, and I was still finishing then the last 2 years of those degrees. But then again, had an issue when I finished those degrees. I was then stuck again with too much time and an overactive mind. And it was in my fourth year of being in London. My role was to originate M&A transactions in the sports services space. And I'd always now wanted to go. I'd seen this opportunity that the facilities management sector had a lot of small companies and then these massive companies and nothing in the middle. If I could create something in the middle, it'd be worth quite a lot. But now you've got to realize I've met an English girl. She's got a 4-year-old son, and I'm responsible for them. And I'm now wanting to go and become an entrepreneur again, and I'm now wanting to go and take this risk again. And now you've got all those old fears of what happened in the past and being responsible. But eventually, I took the plunge. 3i had backed a guy, and he'd made a lot of money, and he basically said he wanted to do it again. And I said to him, look, if you're going to do this, I know exactly the businesses to buy, and can I come and do this with you? He said, yeah, look, no problem. You want to become a Mr. Shareholder, a Mr. Entrepreneur, you can do it, but I'm not going to pay you anything. You're going to have to stand on your own 2 feet. And I just got my bonus from PwC that year. It was in the September, and I'd gotten £10,000. So I had pretty much 2 months of working capital. And I said to my then girlfriend, I said, look, I'm going to try this. And to her credit, she said, okay. And I left and I set up a company called Ronin. I had no idea how fast £10,000 would go. And cut a long story short, I found that business to invest in 11 months later. So for 11 months, I survived with no salary. And again, that was difficult, because if you're an entrepreneur on your own and you sleep in your own sofa or someone's sofa, or you at home, whatever, it's okay. But when you've got people that are responsible, that you're responsible for, it's probably the most stressful part of being an entrepreneur is it's not just you. They are living. You might have your dream and you're trying to do stuff, but they are in the end probably reaping the rewards. But in those early years, I mean, I could spend 5 hours telling you the harsh realities of having no money and not being able to pay rent and not being able to buy the kid a PlayStation and all those things, while you're pursuing something that isn't materializing and there's nothing there. So it took me 11 months to find that company to invest in. And all the way along, we haven't got money to get through every month. And I'm now still believing that I can do it. I can find this business. And again, with what had happened in the past, and it was very, very difficult to keep going. But one thing probably that most entrepreneurs have is that ability to probably take more stress than others can, and to keep pushing through. So luckily in the September of the following year, found that business, bought it, we invested in it. But again, even though once we'd done that deal, I still didn't have a salary, because I was a shareholder. I was not a fully fledged employee, and I got paid. I think it was $2,300 a month as a consultancy retainer, but it wasn't enough to cover costs. So literally for the next couple of years, I was still fighting every month. And I remember probably the low point was, we used to have this Coke bottle, which was a see-through plastic Coke bottle, and it was a money tin. You put coins in, and whenever I went out today, we didn't have Zelda, and we didn't have chip and pin back in those days. So you used to use cash for things. And I'd also go and buy like a cup of coffee for £5 or £10, and I'd put the coins in my pocket. When I get home, the little boy would sort of go in my pockets and he'd pull the money out, would fill up this money box. And I said to him, when we get to about £2,500, we're going to go and have our first beach holiday. We're going to go to the beach, and it's £2,500. We're going to go to Spain. And I was probably about a year down the track of collecting this money. And eventually I got to the stage where I just ran out of everything, maxed on the credit cards, borrowed all I could. And I didn't have money to go to the client meetings. And I had to take that bottle to the bank, and I cashed it in. And the lady said, "Oh, is this your kid's savings money?" Yeah, no, it's the kids. I'm cashing the kid. Oh, that's great. What's he going to do? Got home, and yeah, he got home that day from school, and the money box was gone. And he knew, because he would hear the conversations about things were tough. And so that's difficult. That's when you're pursuing something, but other people are paying a big price for that. So anyway, I don't know how, just got through those early years, and then that business grew massively. We went from invested, we did 10.7 million of turnover, 12.7 million of turnover. Eventually, when we sold in December 13, we sold that at 180 million turnover. Went from 800 staff to 8,500 staff. 300,000 of profit to 8.5 million. It was a great journey. A lot of luck in there, a lot of acquisitions, which I originated in the first 3 years. But then we got to 2010. The guy said, "Look, James, we've now gone from 12 million turnover to 110 million. We've got to be able to show a organic story now. We can't just rely on acquisitions to grow. Can you help the sales team?" So I said, "Sure." And I was helping in bids and tenders. We lost a massive tender in 2010 because we scored 2 out of 10 in the sustainability question set. And the winners, Mighty PLC, the big darlings of the FTSE 250, only scored 3 out of 10. And I thought, my God, if we'd scored a little bit more, we would have won that tender. And I couldn't stop thinking about that. And I said to the guys, look, we got there's a business here which we should try and buy a sustainability consultancy. We should develop one. They said, no, look, we just got so many other things we're trying to do. It just wasn't a priority. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And eventually in April 2010, I said, look, I can't. I'm thinking about this continually. I want to have a go at it. So they said, sure, leave your shares there. Off you go. Good luck. Best of luck to you. Go and see what you can do. And it was a bit of that Jerry Maguire moment where you write your mission statement. And I remember it was a Sunday, and I'd sent out about 200 emails from all the people. Now I'd met some really influential people during my PwC times. 5 years out of PwC, I knew a lot of people on board level people. I thought, this is going to be so easy. Everyone's going to need this. I'm going to send out these emails, and oh my God, how am I going to deal with the workload in? I haven't got any staff. And I sent those emails out on the Sunday with a delayed send for Monday. And I just looked at Monday morning. I was just, oh my God, I can't wait. And I got nothing. I got one, don't contact me again. And I think 2 best of lucks. And I thought, shit, I've gotten this so wrong. So now,
what year is this?
This is 2010. So 2010, I was probably about 10 years too early. So again, now I've doubled down again. I'm now not only, I don't have money. I've now started a company, which again is going to have no revenue. So again, I was back on that sort of double or quits roller coaster of thinking. We were down. Luckily, I had a business partner who invested in the business because I had no cash. I just had time and energy. But we were down. We were down a lot of the first 2-3 years. But again, it was just this view that I had that I couldn't have been wrong. I scored 2 out of 10. Mighty scored 3 out of 10. There must be other companies that have got this problem. I just had to find them. But sustainability back in 2010 was you either did a lot, so you were the innocent smoothies, or you were Body Shop, or you did nothing. There was very little in the middle. And so those that were already there, they didn't need your help. And those at the beginning were not going down that route. But what we did have in the early years was people saying, hey, look, my energy is a mess. My waste is a mess. Can you help? And so one thing I always learned as an entrepreneur is you always say yes, and then you figure it out as you go. So we created those 2 divisions about 6 months after we set up, realizing that the ESG was just not going to work. But at that stage, luckily, there was a demand for energy and waste. And we still have those 2 divisions today. We procure a good couple of £100 million worth of energy a year and about £20 million worth of waste. So we still have those 2 divisions, but those 2 divisions kept us going for the first 8 years. And 2018, we had about 250 clients. We had just energy and waste. But 2015, just row back a bit, I had wouldn't say burn myself out, because I tell my mom I'm not a candle. She always tells me I'm going to burn myself out, but I just tell her it's not possible. But I was emotionally drained. I think just because of the sheer pace at which I do everything, I was finished. I had not almost taken a day off. I'd worked Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, just worked so much, and I needed a break. So I took some time out, 2015 to 2018. Came back in 2019 to the shareholders. I said, look, I think this market has actually changed now, and I want to reinvest back into SA. The ESG market is now what I saw 10 years ago. I think is now coming to fruition, and effectively then set up the ESG offering as it is today back in 2019. So started off with carbon. I did the carbon accounting, went through the ESOS rounds, SECR reporting, and then started with impact reports, creating impact reports for companies that want to tell their story. And then in 2000, it really, really accelerated really quickly. So we started doing ESG evaluations, helping companies create their strategy. So that's pretty much, So today, I guess, another 5 years on for that, as I said, we now got about 90 consultants, probably about 750 clients. Those are blue chip clients, listed clients, international clients. We work a lot with private equity because we get that. So when I set the business up, the strapline was helping companies embrace sustainability for strategic advantage. It was to showcase to boards, to owners, that actually, if you did this properly, this is not only good for the environment, for people, for communities, this is good for you as a business. And so because of that ethos, we work very well with private equity owned businesses because we can actually enhance the value of that business through the ESG activities. So that pretty much brings you up to today.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for that. A few follow-up questions. I can't go back to all of it, but a few follow-up questions more around Sustainable Advantage then. So is it those 3 service offerings then? So you have the ESG work, and then you have energy and waste, or do you have any others?
We've got one more. We've also got a utility solutions division. They will help construction companies or developers, or even, Pret a Manger as a client of ours. When Pret was opening up 20, 30 stores in a year, we would go and upgrade or install a new meter, and that was really the precursor to buying the energy. So we have that as a division now that will help. But as I say, it's more of a precursor to someone procuring the energy we get in the metering, either upgraded or installed. So those 4 divisions, of which the pure ESG consulting is about 60% of the business, and then probably 15% energy procurement, 15% waste, and probably about 10% the utility connections and solutions business.
And you mentioned the offices in the UK and also Paris, I think you said?
Yeah, we just opened up an office now in probably about 2 months ago. So we work with quite a few PE houses that like the way we do things here in the UK and want to roll that out globally. So we've done quite a lot in France. Also, outside of France, we've done work in Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, all over the world. But France, we actually did quite a lot more in France than any of the other regions, and it's very difficult to win work from England into France. It's tough. We have won it, but that's a tough ask.
I've been through that journey myself, so yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. And so we've got a fantastic team now based in Paris. I think we've been going now for I think it's 3 months, and we've already won a couple of mandates that team is delivering. So the plan is really to expand into Europe. There's still a lot to do in the UK, without a doubt. But I think what is quite nice is the model and what we operate is scalable, is transferable. But you really need to be in country. People want to deal with local people. You can grow, but you're not really going to do it at the scale that we want to do it. Dabbling and trying to resource from here.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. So I suppose to start with then, I'm interested to see what your positioning is in this ESG and sustainability consultancy space, because clearly we've worked with a lot of firms in the space, but many are struggling, downsizing, shifting focus right now. Particularly, I suppose, those sort of lower cost, high volume plans. We're certainly seeing those companies being affected. So what's your position in the market, and why do you believe that you're continuing to see success and growth despite a macro economy where sustainability is coming under some scrutiny?
Yeah. The one thing I learned early on with Sustainable Advantage is you have to listen to the clients. So all the way along, almost every idea I've come up with, every product has been because a client has said, "I've got this problem," and then you go next week, someone says, "I've got this problem." So if you listen to where there are problems, that's where, let's say where the money is, but that's where the secret is. So we have continually evolved. As I said, we started with an ESG consultancy. I could have, after a year, said to my business partner, "Look, sorry about that. I got it wrong, and no one's buying ESG services." But the client says, "I've got this problem. I've got that problem." And so we have continually evolved and listened to where the clients have got issues and created products and solutions and created them fast, because we're a small, nimble organization. But even within that, within ESG, we've got probably 15 to 20 sub-products that someone can come to us from. So where we're very different is we got some very large clients, listed clients, global clients turning over a couple of £1 billion, but most of our clients are mid-market who have to go on this journey because their clients are asking them for ESG, data, information, bids and tenders, but they haven't got the resources and knowledge. So it's important that you don't only offer the advice, but you stay with them on that journey. So we deliver loads of things. We create the strategy, but then we are attending quarterly ESG committee meetings and then delivering lots of the works. We've got specialists internally that are either carbon or bid specialists, social value specialists, supply chain specialists, regulatory specialists. So we help clients so they can dip in and out very cost effectively along that journey. So I think where we're different, no doubt the market is, I wouldn't say it's gone backwards, but it hasn't got the tailwinds. I mean we were growing. I think we had 2 years at 50% growth. The tailwinds were just massive, and I think because I would like to say that a better even a better consultant than some of the others. The tailwind was probably 20-25%, and we were doubling that. But what's changed now is possibly some of the discretionary spend is maybe people are saying, look, I won't do it now. I'll do it in, I'll come to that next year. But the drivers are still there. If you're tendering to the public sector, you're going to have a decarbonization program. You're going to have a net zero program. You have to focus on social value. That hasn't gone away. And so I think when it gets difficult, you've just got to work harder. You've got to, instead of reaching out to 100 people a month, you've got to reach 200. And it really becomes a bit of a numbers game because there are still loads of companies out there that want and need support. So I think for us, I think we don't charge a lot in terms of we're not expensive. We try and be cost effective, but we offer a phenomenal output to the client. So we don't compromise on the quality. So actually for what we deliver, we got, especially in the waste business, we save clients, 10-20% in the waste cost. We're actually we reduce costs. We're not a cost to the client. And on the ESG side, especially because you're hitting home the bids and tenders, the competitor positioning, the alignment to clients, all those things are things you can't really turn on and off. They're always things that a client really wants and needs. And so as long as you're not rigid in what you try and offer, that you're flexible, but you make it that the client, it's an easy decision for the client to keep on with that. And we got, our churn is under 5% as an organization. We generally try and work incredibly hard. We've got passionate people that absolutely love what they do and they want to deliver a good service. And as long as you have that ethos, and as I said, it's not expensive, it's affordable, but the value that you generate is many multiples more than what you're charging. You should be okay.
Sure. And it sounds like you've got a good blend there, because clearly your background as a business owner and entrepreneur, and I hope you understand what I'm saying when I say this, but not a sustainability professional through and through. Yep. But it sounds like you've got passionate people that maybe are more aligned to that, but the balance between the commercial view and the passion and purpose, that can create great things. How do you balance that though, where you have, I suppose, the business hat of, we want to increase sales and we want to grow this, we want to grow this business.
Yeah.
And then you've got individuals and people who are very purpose driven and perhaps have ideas around the sorts of clients they want to work with or things they don't want to do. What's your view on that? Because we come into that concept quite often with particularly candidates we talk to.
That's a big challenge, and anyone who runs a sustainability consultancy will tell you it's one of the biggest challenges. Is the people you employ are incredibly passionate. If they could probably do it, they wouldn't even earn a salary. They would just volunteer everywhere because they are that committed to helping out. But you can't run a business profitably with just an open-ended, there's a client and just deliver until so there is and that's not my skill or my role. There's a management team here that deals with that. But in order to recruit more people, in order to invest in training, to be able to invest in systems, you have to focus on profitability because we're in a great position because we're run in a very conservative manner. Don't take cash out the company, reinvest everything. We would never cut back. We don't need to cut back on staff or downsize. We can always focus on growth, but you can only do that if you've been careful and you've created a business model that is recurring, not lots of one-off revenues, big projects, sell something for I don't know whatever amount, and then it's gone. We like to work in partnership with our clients. So because it is much more of a relationship-based approach, clients sort of aren't coming back and forth. But to your point about consultants, it is difficult. In many ways, the consultants that come in have to be trained on how to be business people, because if you're running a division, so let's say you're in the carbon team or the impact report writing team, that's a mini business. And so that head has to, recruit staff, sell work, and it's a mini P&L, and you've got to manage that. So, but it is a challenge because it is alien to a lot of people, even timesheets. Why do I need a timesheet? Well, we have to understand how much time we spend to create that, because if we're not making enough, we've got to get the sales team to put the prices up because we can't lose money in that. So it is a process, but as long as you explain to them why you're doing it and that this is good for them, it's good for the business, they eventually get it. But most of them come in with very little proper consultancy, corporate consultancy expertise and timesheets and billable hours, and that it's something you've got to educate them on.
Sure. And you mentioned private equity being a space you're doing a lot in, particularly around the sort of value creation piece, it sounds like. Yeah. What do you see as some of the biggest pressures that PE firms and their portfolio companies are facing specifically from an ESG perspective, and how do you help them? Yeah, how do you help them with that?
I think from a private equity perspective, again, these are, groups of individuals, very clever, very savvy, that are raising £400-500 million from LPs. LPs, pension funds, insurance companies, sovereign wealth funds, high net worth offices, they're putting money in, often now, philanthropically, some of them, and are now wanting, to ensure that their money is being put to good use. We don't want anything coming back reputationally. So that's where the pressure starts, is at that level down into the private equity group. They're saying, okay, well, you have to report these metrics. So because it's being cascaded down from LP to GP or private equity, they haven't got the expertise often, and they're now having to fulfill tick these boxes and send back metric sets every year, and that then gets cascaded down to the portfolio companies. So our role is to effectively make that whole process smoother by working with the bottom up, really work with the portfolio company to explain why these metrics are needed, why that process is needed, how it helps in the whole machine, but actually, a lot of those metrics are going to help you become a better business anyway. And actually, I know they're asking for your scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, but actually this is what your clients are asking for. So we're taking the portco on the journey that enables us to provide that information back up to the private equity house. We're consolidating that information that goes up to the LP. So our role is to try and, as I said, make ESG part of business success rather than it's now this thing that we have to do because the LPs asked the GP and the GPs asked the portco. So that's our role. Our role with most of our private equity clients is we look after the whole ESG process. That's from doing ESG due diligence before they invest, then doing the annual assessments, annual metric gathering, improvement, and then them selling that business. The last 12 months is an intensive exit readiness process. And all that information again gets collated every year annually up to the GP, and then that goes up to the LP from there. So it's pretty intensive.
Sure. And you mentioned a few times in that answer around the visibility around data. And am I right in saying that you have some sort of visualization tool around data or ESG data that you use with your clients, or perhaps you could share more around that sort of real time analysis they're able to do?
Yes. So the one problem we found is visualization. Keeping track of an ESG journey is difficult. You've got probably, in any assessment we do, there's probably about 50 different sort of sub projects that are going on within probably 10 different fields. And so the challenge you have as an ESG committee, who we're working with the boards in empowering the ESG committee, who we're then working with, and they're then pushing it down to the organization, managing 50 sub-projects and understanding where did we start, where do we need to get to, who's doing that piece, where are they? That was a big problem. And so again, coming back to my earlier point of listening and ensuring that I'm solving problems. One of the big things we've got is, James, a great plan. That we love the strategy, love the action plan, but how are we going to manage this? Yeah, you're right. That's difficult. So created this ESG performance tracker, which is effectively a live ESG dashboard that is tracking that journey in real time for the ESG committee to use. That is also then in many ways also available to the PE house. They can see that across their entire portfolio. So they'll have to go and ask questions. They can tell you in a live format how each of their portfolio companies are doing from an ESG perspective.
And I think that, we were talking a bit about, before we started, about kind of AI and how that's kind of affecting things. Does this have any inbuilt sort of machine learning to help? Are you there yet? Or is that part of the version 2, or how does that integrate to what you?
Again, when I was younger, I remember the first time I was introduced to a computer. It was called the ZX. There's a ZX Spectrum 32 and a Commodore 64. And I remember coming home and someone said, "Oh, this is a thing called a computer." It's like, okay, so you plug it in, and sort of, what, I don't get this. What? No, there's no ways. I'm going to go play outside. So I unfortunately, from that day, really didn't have much time spent indoors because I couldn't sit down. So I wish I was actually. If I went back in time, I'd love to have been involved more in IT. I obviously aware of AI is a big driver. Never really delved into too deeply, and latterly have had to, because it is such a big potential either disruptor or an enabler. The way I see AI is, phenomenal tool. If I'm going to now, and I use AI quite a lot from a research perspective, but not anything where I'm going to form an opinion. So I will say, look, I'm looking for the top 50 care home groups I want to go and target. So stuff like that is brilliant. How it can bring things. I want to go and ask things. So you can learn. I use it as a learning tool, and it's brilliant because I'm not necessarily absolutely relying on every single thing that it outputs. But the way it summarizes it is brilliant. But where AI can't take over is if I look at what our clients are asking for, they're not just saying, James, go and create an ESG strategy. It's, I need you to understand my unique drivers, who my clients are, what they're doing from an ESG perspective, who are my competitors, what are they doing, what am I being asked for in bids and tenders, what resources do I have available, how fast do I want to go. So there's a hell of a lot of factors that you should bear in mind, and how a company is set up. It's different if someone's procuring their own energy versus they're in a landlord office for what the advice you're going to give. So our USP, I think, is that we don't offer generic advice. Every client will feel that we are offering them an absolute tailored solution. And so that's where AI struggles is it's not able to, we don't rely on surveys when we're doing our ESG assessments. We're having Teams calls like this. We're meeting with the head of HR, meeting with the head of estates, head of procurement. We're having these conversations to delve into why this hasn't happened. How fast could we go? AI is never going to be able to do that. But what AI is phenomenal at, if I'm a consultant, if I joined Sustainable Advantage today, and you locked me you can't lock me in a room, I would go crazy. But if you said to me, James, you've got a month, I need you to learn these 10, 15 topics. I'm not saying I'll be an expert in a month, but I can tell you now, I remember when I was obviously a lot older than you, Josh, I remember having to go down to the library and getting a library card, and I had a project on Egypt. You'd have to go and find the book on Cairo, and you'd have to go and use the UE decimal system to go and find this book, get it out, and you'd have to go through. We all had encyclopedias at home, and that was all the data you had. That was all the information you had. There was nothing else available. So to learn and to become an expert back 20, 30 years ago was very, very difficult. Today, as I said, if you just left me alone for 2-3 hours and I had the internet, you can learn a hell of a lot. But that's not what clients want. Clients want a tailored program delivered and created just for where we are and where we want to go at the pace we want to go at. So I think AI is great as a learning tool, as an enabler, and certainly in many, many things it's going to help you be more successful. But we don't use AI to generate any reports, to generate anything that we use. To learn, yes. To pinpoint, to find, yes. But I think there's a big risk as well. You imagine if I go and put something in a report that I've just picked up from AI and it turns out to be wrong, that would be catastrophic. So I think it's still a long way to go from really relying heavily on it.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And I think because of the accessibility of information now, and how easy it is, clients can actually form a much more informed decision on something themselves without relying on an organization like yourself. But what they rely on you for is that interpretation and, as you say, the actual application of what it is that's needed. So I think that's where it's about standing out in any service-based industry. We see it as a recruitment business. The conversation all the time is now, okay, well, can AI replace recruiters? Can we screen resumes, and can we look at criteria? And yes, of course it can. But the point that I always tell our team and where we stand out is, one, we've got the relationships with individuals who will pick up our call. And number two, we can interpret what a client needs, push back on their assumptions of what they think they need to what they actually need, and then provide that solution. And that's something that I think technology, to my knowledge at the moment anyway, can't do. So
agreed.
There's some
agreed.
Moving on to some of the more business elements of Sustainable Advantage then. I'm keen to understand more about the kind of the structure and I suppose the leadership, because you speak very well about the growth journey, but I want to unpick a couple of these points, because I do talk to lots of people who perhaps have been great practitioners in this space, or maybe have their own independent consultancy thinking about growth, but I think we'll probably be looking at it very differently to you and how you've done things with your M&A background and that mindset. So firstly, just to clarify the structure of Sustainable Advantage without sharing any confidential information, but it's privately owned, as I understand it, yourself and some shareholders. How does that ownership structure help your longer term strategy, or how does that come into play when you're thinking about what the future is?
So as you say, we're privately held, which in some ways is good, because you get to you get to do what you want. You get to make your own decisions. You decide you want to open up a division. We want to go and open up a business in France. You get to have that autonomy. And most of us are probably like naughty school kids. You like not having a boss tell you what to do. But then you have constraints. If we were private equity owned, we could go and make many acquisitions, and of course that's my background really. But I think there is a time and a place for that. And so at the moment we've chosen to go down the path of running on our own. We were growing at 50% anyway. So when you have that kind of growth, you almost feel like you don't necessarily still need to chuck more on, because you probably couldn't manage growing at 50% a year, recruiting all those people, keeping the quality up, and they're still doing acquisitions. But I do think the private equity model is a great one from the acquisition perspective. I'm very fortunate. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a business. I'm not a typical board person. Yes, I sit in our board, but I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a disruptor. I'm the person that probably the board has to control. So I'm very lucky. I've got very sensible, experienced people around me that have run businesses turning over hundreds of millions of pounds, and they're the ones that have got the control. I'm on the other spectrum. I'm trying to push. I'm trying to disrupt. So I'm fortunate from that perspective that because I co-founded, I have that leeway that I can maybe do a lot more than other people can. But one thing I did learn in my I've only been really involved in 2 businesses, but you've got to play to your strengths. And I've got many weaknesses, but I'm aware of those weaknesses, and I acknowledge them, and I understand they're there. And then I've got a very small number of strengths that I rely on. But knowing that, and then just deciding, so could I be the MD? I self-appointed myself as MD when I was employee 1, because I thought it was a grand title. I thought I always wanted to be the MD. I'm employee number 1. I'm the MD. But my God, I realized quite early on that that's a difficult role, because you've got to deal with people.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm not good at. I don't like dealing with people and having to engage too much with people. So I like the fact that I don't manage anybody. Nobody manages me. In effect, I'm just left to win work and to create products. And that's a luxury for me that I probably wouldn't get in any other organization, is that ability just to be left alone and run and do what I do.
Sure. And just to tap into that then, I suppose, how did you, because it sounds fairly simple how you described it, but I know in running my own business and the challenges that come, that's not so simple and easy to do, to extract yourself and have a leadership team that can run a business. So maybe just could you talk me through that? I appreciate you left the business for a bit of time, and maybe that was this for it, but even before then, how did you set it up so that when you realized that perhaps wasn't playing to your strengths, that you were able to put yourself in a position that did and have others that could do? What's your approach? I think,
the biggest probably stroke of luck I had is that the chairman that was my co-founder that invested in the business originally when I started, is just incredibly knowledgeable. Has run, as I said, businesses turning over hundreds of millions of pounds, private equity backed. He's done everything. So he was originally only supposed to invest some money and sit back. And luckily for me, he got more and more involved. And as the business was growing, I think he did see that there was potential for it to grow and expand. And he, by his nature, I think, just realized, hang on, this guy's got these strengths, but he's got massive gaps over here. And he sort of filled in behind me until eventually, it just became a full-time role for him. Luckily so for me, because if it was just me there, I think Sustainable Advantage would have either been worth £1 billion or zero, and probably closer to zero if I was left to my own devices, because I'd be doing all sorts of things. So I was very lucky. But with that comes an incredible amount of stress, because we're on a seesaw, and I'm on this side and he's on that side. I'm all about growth, a new product every day, a new client vertical, and it's too much for them to not to handle, but it's too much. Rightly so. It's hang on, you got to have some discipline. So I think if it was all his way, it would be too structured, too controlled. If it was all my way, it would be totally out of control. But that's what I've learned, and where he's very good is he taught me how to fight. He taught me how to argue, and we've never fallen out. We've had, actually, in 15 years, we've had 2 times we had to go and have a dinner, and we had to sort of mend things, because we both got so annoyed at each other. It was in the same way, he wants control and I want no control. But when you bring these different people together, it's successful. And I've learned that conflict is okay, difference of opinion is okay. it's how you resolve those and how you put your views forward. Because I see it like this, it's just from my perspective. It doesn't mean that I'm right. And in many ways I have been right. Many times I've been wrong. But the more you debate these things, and you often then come to a common ground, it stood us in good stead. And I was just, as I said, very, very fortunate that I just focused on selling, and I was good at selling, and that was all I did. And he picked up behind me, and I would never really have seen myself as the MD. I called myself that because I thought it was a grand title, and I could put it on my LinkedIn profile and my CV that I was the MD. But I never really was in. I was always the founder. People saw me as, but that MD role, you've got to be phenomenal. You've got to be good with people. You've got to be hard with clients. You've got to be good with clients. You've got to be strategic. You've got to understand numbers. It's you've got to be, I have a massive amount of respect for people that can run companies. I couldn't. I really, there's just no ways I could run. I just don't have the skills. Even if that company had 5 people in it, it just wouldn't work for them. I think more than for me.
Sure, understood. But you have mentioned a few times in your journey, and obviously your background being in M&A, and I know when we've been speaking that although you're going down the more of the organic route, you are interested in exploring acquisitions and things that could add value to Sustainable Advantage. Maybe for anyone listening that might be running something smaller that's thinking about an exit themselves, what kind of businesses are you looking for? And I suppose what are the characteristics that would make them attractive to you?
So first thing is just, do you embark on an M&A route or not? So the previous business I had been going for 30 years, very slow growth, but steady, and by the time we, as I said, invested in them, they had 800 staff, they had all the structure in place. So it was actually very easy to go do acquisitions because it was a very stable business that you could take the FD out for a while to go do acquisition. You could integrate, you had all the policies that the business could adopt. So you have to have a stable foundation. But I reckon if we didn't do those acquisitions, we probably would have taken an 11 million turnover business and maybe it would have been 20 million. It would, over a long period of time, would have been really pedestrian. Those acquisitions really took that business from 11 to 180 million. It was the skill set, the people, the clients, and then you go and buy an acquisition. All of a sudden, you've got new skills, you've got new clients, you cross sell. It is the quickest way to make money is through M&A. And as I said, we got very lucky. We bought distressed businesses that were making £2 million. We bought for £1 out of processes. Did that twice. Just got lucky, as I said. But the skill sets, that was. And if I look back now, I was really spoiled because it was the first business I'd really gotten involved in out of PwC that I, other than my own consultancy, that I was involved in. It was almost so easy. And looking back now, I can appreciate how lucky we got. Not how we worked hard, but we got very, very lucky. So if I look back now at would I do acquisitions now? Yes, I would. We're looking at 2 small ones at the moment. I always see acquisitions as the difficulty you have, though, is because of the lack of firepower we have. We're buying small consultancies. We'd be buying something that you'd be paying anywhere between 1 and 5-6 million. The problem is it's always going to be reliant on 1 or 2 people. And no matter what they say, I don't really turn up and the management team, right? There's absolutely no way. So that's the biggest risk you have is buying small businesses is that reliance on that person who's now exiting. And they all say that they're going to stay committed, but they get that cash. It's just different. It's just not the same. So if you can find someone that's finding it slightly tough, and now it's not a bad environment for that because people are realizing it's not so easy. 2-3 years ago, everyone was so bullish and, we're going to make millions out of this. Now they realize this is slightly harder. And we're all competing with the likes of ERM and Anthesis. These guys have been around for 20 years. They turn over hundreds of millions. They're massive. If we came together and actually now you invest and you partner with someone that's got a unique service that you can bolt on, whether they're in another territory or another skill set. But what it is more of is an investment into that business. So maybe you offer them 50% cash out, and then the other 50% they're rolling over shares into your business. So they've got a bit of cash to de-risk themselves because that's important, but they're on the journey with you. That's really, really important. So would we buy something now where someone says, I'm cashing out 100%? No ways, absolutely no ways. You've got to find people that are similar to you in where they see the market going and what they want to do, but they see it as it's almost a merger. And that is the only thing I think we would in the short term consider is coming together with complementary skill sets or geographies, but they've got to be on the journey with us rather than that's that they're exiting.
Sure. And then a final question for me around actually 2 questions about the industry. The first is, from your perspective and the view you get from the clients you talk to, do you believe that on the whole, companies are still invested in sustainability? And I suppose how you're viewing the current backlash, and what that means for the teams being cut, or the funding being drying up. What's your take on the industry?
So our ESG evaluation program is there's 15 we call themes, and there's 140 singular areas we could evaluate a company on. Of course, when we do it, there's many less we choose in the top 50, but shows you how broad ESG is. There's only really two very contentious areas of that. One is DE&I, and the other one is climate change. Does it exist? Is it all a hoax? Those are two out of so many topics. If you think about all the other topics, procuring energy effectively, understanding how you use consumption, using less energy, recycling more, diverting waste from landfill, ensuring that your product isn't damaging the environment, retaining staff, paying staff fairly. All of these things are good business sense. And yeah, there are these two areas that have got a bit of a knock-in at the moment. But the reality is, even on the climate change piece, we talk to people about using less energy. We haven't got finite resources. Even if you're talking about coal, you've got to. This is just good business sense. And so there is a little bit of navel gazing at the moment, because there's a lot of noise, especially from the US on this. I'm not going to get swayed by someone else's view over there about what I think is important. I think the environment's important. I think your staff's important. I think you should help communities. I can't turn away from that. And so I think those that are maybe slightly unsure, as I said, maybe on the periphery, some of those people might have come back a bit. But there's a core of people that think we've got to look after people. We've got to look after the environment. And I just can't see that going away. So absolutely, there's a little bit of a slight lessening of the tailwind we had, but I don't see it going away. And as I said, I still see it as a great thing to do and a great service to offer to our clients. And that's the way I see that.
Sure. And then my last one then, if you were to be starting Sustainable Advantage now rather than when you did, what would you do differently?
Oh, sure. That's an interesting one. What would I do differently? I think the one thing we probably got wrong is I don't think we invested enough in the sales function early on. I think we didn't pay enough. We tried to recruit salespeople that we thought were okay, but we didn't really spend good money. If we'd gotten that right early on, we would have been probably 3 times the size as what we are now. So I would have probably focused more on gaining clients. Even if you just said, James, the first, 10 years you're going to break even, but you're just getting more and more clients because you invested so heavily in the sales function. That's probably the one thing we were too cautious on, is we were growing well, but we never really pushed hard enough on the sales side, as in the number of salespeople, the different channels. And it's probably the regret that we didn't push harder earlier on. And we've got a great sales team now that are doing fantastic things. But if I had that sales team 10 years ago, it's that sort of, the angle you start early on, that gap becomes so much bigger if you start early on. So my advice is, and I remember my dad saying this to me, is if things are difficult, you've got 2 choices. You either sack the salespeople to reduce costs, or you employ more salespeople. And employing more salespeople is almost always a solution, because if you have more clients, more revenue, everything else you can solve, but you can't cut your way out of something. Eventually, there's nothing left to cut, and you're cutting corners that are going to then impact the client. So you want to focus on. I'm always growth minded, but you want to focus on growth. If I'd gotten that right earlier on and spent more money on a good sales team, I think we would have been 3 times the size today.
Cool. And also, it's the missed opportunity of not having that established sales team, and then the market.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
it expedites even more, doesn't it?
But see, salespeople are the hardest people to recruit because they're good sellers.
Yes.
And so when you're on the call, it's like, oh my God, these people are amazing. I mean, we have hired and fired so many salespeople, and because they're very, they're by nature they're personable. They know how to sell something. They're selling themselves, and you don't really know until they join what you uncover. But I can tell you some stories that we've you can imagine 15 years. We got 90 people now. We probably, I don't know, overall we must have had maybe another 50, 60 come and go through our doors. People are interesting. They're interesting. So we've seen all sorts.
Sure. So a couple of quick fire questions before we
Yes.
wrap up then.
Okay.
So when you're talking to, if you do this now, talking to CEOs, MDs of your client companies,
Yeah.
what do you think is the most used phrase that you have when you're talking about sustainability?
I tell them that this is a value drive. It's critical. It's not a nice to have. It's not a want to have. You cannot. I mean, the number of clients we have that are, whether they believe in ESG or not, the number of clients that are under pressure from a bid and tender perspective. It's not something that I think you almost optionally can do. It really is, and it's embedded into every part of your business anyway. So for me, it's not a nice to have. It's not optional. This is actually an imperative business driver for you to embrace it and to do it well.
And what's one thing you believe about sustainability that most others disagree with?
I think the fact that it is a creator of value. I think a lot of people think sustainability is, charitable work and planting trees, and it is that, but it is so much more. And I see sustainability, as I said, as something that a lot of people, your staff, believe in it. Sometimes we come across boards that are a little bit on the edge. Most of the staff are really passionate, believe it. And clients are all over at the moment. And I was overseas a year or two ago, and I was on a beach with my 6-year-old, and she loves collecting shells. And we were on this beach walking down collecting these shells. I cannot tell you the amount of plastic that was just scattered all over this beach. And I was now trying to explain to my 6-year-old. She's saying, "Why is all this here? Where does it come from?" And you realize just the damage we do is immense. And I think a lot of people want to personally now do all they can to address that. And that's why, as I said, I think sustainability is great because it achieves good outcomes. But I think if you do it well and you're not paying lip service and putting sticky plaster on things, it is also that it can create a business where people feel like they're doing things in an ethical way. They're making money with whatever they do, but they're helping communities. They're looking after their staff. They're not doing damage to the environment. And I just can't imagine people not doing that. It just doesn't compute for me.
For sure. What would you say has been the best business decision that you've made at Sustainable Advantage?
I think for me personally, it wasn't giving up. I those first 3 years, I mean, every night I got home to my then girlfriend, and she's like, "What are we doing? We haven't got money to pay the rent. What are you doing?" So I was glad I stuck it out. I was glad I took that pressure from absolutely everybody that said, "Stop! This is not going to work. This is just no 3 years. This is crazy. You're being a bad partner. This is just not good." I was glad I stayed. I'm the most proud of the staff we've recruited. The people that, every one of the 90 staff, I would gladly go on holiday with. I'd gladly go and have lunch with. These are great individuals, and I'm incredibly proud of the types of people that have committed to the business and want to be here and their passion. In terms of best issues, I said that, sticking it out when it was tough, and I think just being committed to what you're going to do. And there's ups and downs. We have great days, we have tough days. But you've got to be focused, and you've got to push really, really hard. I think as an entrepreneur, you cannot play. People talk about work-life balance, and my staff do, and that's great for them, and I understand it. I have no work-life balance. I am all in 100%, 7 days a week. Other than Christmas, I'm on this, and I'm thinking continually about the business and about how I can make it more successful. Because again, there's a lot of stress. You're employing 90 families that you've got to look after. It's your responsibility. You make a bad decision, they bear the consequences. So I think you've got to be committed. I think you just got to go all out, and you've got to listen to clients. You've got to employ good people, but you've got to listen to clients. And so I think we've done that really well. We've employed good people, we've listened to clients, and we've created products that are phenomenal quickly.
Sure. And if you could acquire one type of business to improve Sustainable Advantage right now, what would it be?
That's a tough one, because we've got a very broad offering, but there's probably two areas that if you said to me now, start a business from scratch, what would you do in this space? I think most of the companies have got their ESG, they're doing a lot now, but the supply chain is woefully behind. So I think the next wave is going to be on how do I get the supply chain on the journey. We've got some great products we've created for that more recently. And the other one is around data and metrics. There's still a huge problem about how do I extract data from my clients and how is it done easily? Because all the information is spread in HR systems, energy procurement systems, it's all over the place. Extracting that data easily and then turning the data into more readily real-time information that provides feedback. Those are, for me, are the two biggest sort of growth areas. And so if there were businesses that we could find or buy that had those two skill sets, we've developed them ourselves internally, but I wouldn't be averse to buying something that was further down the track on both of those areas.
Sure. Well, I'll certainly keep my eye out for those.
Thank you.
And then lastly, James, as you know, the title of the show, it's Better Than We Found It. And the question I ask all of my guests is for your own personal legacy, to feel like you fulfilled that at the end of your career, when maybe it sounds like you won't be in this situation. I was going to say with your pipe and
I can't retire and do nothing. No, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can't retire.
Whenever you get to that point where you're maybe taking a little bit of a step back, what would you like your legacy to be, to show or know that you've left the world better than you found it?
You know, for me, you know, having started a business it is very much like so I've got 3 daughters. You know, one day I hope that they meet nice partners and they get married and they're happy. For me, I've seen many businesses in my time that have been, you know, built up, sold and destroyed. I would love in 20 years time to look back and to read about Sustainable Advantage doing amazing things. That is my biggest hope, is that this business continues to grow, that when I'm no longer here, there's a management team that are just as passionate, just as driven. Because we are, as I said, we've got over 700 clients, and we just took a client this week worked with a client that went from EcoVadis bronze to platinum in 1 year. I mean, a phenomenal result. That client was over the moon, posted about it on LinkedIn, and our staff were so proud that because by doing so, there's a hell of a lot of good things you're achieving to get that accreditation. So if you imagine, we've got 700 clients that are now pushing each of them 50 different areas. That's an amazing amount of impact out there. So if we could just extend that and add more clients, add more staff, add more territories, I'd love to look back one day and see Sustainable Advantage 5, 10, 15 times the size. So for me, that's the most important thing it will, because as I said, I'm now a very, very small part of this machine. I'm a tiny, tiny, tiny cog. Already it's got a life of its own and it's doing its own thing. But if it could carry on, and if it could put ERM and Anthesis out of business, that would be the ultimate goal, but it's probably not going to happen. But if I could just take some of their shine off them, I'd be very happy.
Yeah, you'll be closer to that £1 billion business that you spoke about at the beginning than the zero.
Exactly.
Yeah. But look, I've no doubt you'll be putting all your energy and enthusiasm into making that happen, and it'd be a brave person to bet against you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you for sharing not just the insights on the business, but also your background, upbringing, and how it's led to who you are today. It's been a great journey, and glad to have shone a light on it. If people listen, they're keen to hear more about the organisation. Maybe they're a client that might be interested in your services. What's the best way for them to connect or engage with you? Yeah,
so by email, info@sustainable-advantage.com is a generic email address that'll come through to me. And we'd be delighted to hear from anybody that's looking to enter the field, clients that need help. Anybody that needs support, we'd be delighted to help in any way we can.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to catching up again soon and hearing how the journey continues to go. And I'm sure we can shine a light on it again later down the track. But
thanks for having me, Josh. Thank you.
All the best.
Cheers.
So thank you for joining us on today's show of Better Than We Found It. I'm your host, Josh Huggins, the founder of GS2 Partnership, a talent solutions firm dedicated to sustainability and impact. And at GS2, we connect purpose-led individuals and leaders with roles and organisations and industries that are reshaping the world. With a particular focus on the energy transition, the renewable energy market, sustainable finance, and natural and built environment, we help organisations globally find and attract the best individuals to drive value creation through sustainability.